Welcome to Unfiltered, the big interview. My name is Ogra, and today we're going to be speaking with Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, the Honorable Minister for Industry, Trade and Investments. Dr. Oduwole spearheads initiatives that enhance trade, attract investments, and promote sustainable growth for Nigeria. Under President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, she will be the key driver of his trade and investment policies. Dr. Oduwole, thank you for having us. As we're speaking just before we started the interview, I was just telling you how a lot of people, were positive about your appointments, given that you're coming from Quebec and where you focused on ease of doing business, now to the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Investments, where you have a broader view and, you have the opportunity to actually change things on a larger scale. So the question I have for you is, what is your strategic vision for this ministry and how do you intend to, achieve those goals? What are the goals that you seek to achieve and how do you intend to achieve them?
Thank you for having me, Ortega, and for your kind words. The main vision for the ministry, from my perspective, is to go from policy to performance. So a lot has been said over the times on how we need to deliver for Nigerian people, for the economy, and we have a clear agenda under the 8-point agenda of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. So on item 7 of that 8-point agenda would be diversification, accelerating diversification, job creation, enabling industrialization, digitization. So that's where we come in. And I have 3 clear agenda points that I've been working on over the last 5 months. The first will be investment mobilization, and that has to do with investment retention. So, coming from Quebec, I've been working with business champions, I've been working with small businesses, MSMEs, larger businesses for a number of years. And so I know those issues very well. So investment retention, as I always say, the businesses operating in the Nigerian economy are the best advertisement for foreign direct investment. So we focus on regulatory challenges, legislative interventions, and just general stakeholder engagement and communication. We've done that quite well to build trust and to make sure that they're comfortable and they can flourish in the Nigerian business environment. In that wise, focusing on foreign direct investment leads us to a lot of engagement with diplomats working in the country, with economic attachés to Nigeria, a lot of traveling on the job, traveling with Mr. President. He's been on over 30 international trips. We've tracked that amount. As at December, it was $50.8 billion and following through on that. And then also we have a target of $6 billion for this year. So attracting across priority sectors that we've earmarked for the Nigerian economy. So producing deal books. So for instance, we were in the UAE at the beginning of March. Time is actually blurring. Yes. At the beginning of March for the Investopia event, and 14 de-risk deals, which we were able to present to investors. We also had productive G2G meetings. So that's an idea. I just came back yesterday from London. I was at the Commonwealth Summit speaking on sidelines as well to business to investors, and the Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce also had an investor roundtable. So those are some of the investment mobilization work that we do. It also spans capital markets, making the environment viable for, say, portfolio investors, just capital markets, access to capital, and what would bring investors to this market. So we continue to have a lot of speaking. The next would be trade policy. I'm sure you can't wait to jump into that.
I can't wait.
Yes, but that has been a priority for us, and so we're able to respond and not react to the headwinds that have been coming in the last few days. So we've focused very much on how to reprioritize and operationalize Nigeria's trade policy agenda. Mr. President had asked that we do that work specifically. So G2G, again, we're working on several investment and trade promotion agreements. For instance, we're working with the UAE, the Australian ambassador just left here, the Australian High Commissioner just left here a few moments ago, various countries. And so what this means is that when he says that Nigeria is open for business, we actually mean it. So he was in Brazil, and then the Brazilians, the largest meat exporters in the world, were here they're actually putting down the investment, $2.5 billion announcement. They've gone to Ogun State, Niger State, making those investments an actuality. So it is the trade policy that underpins the G2G agreements. And with our trade policy, one of the most important things that Nigeria is doing is prioritizing the operationalization of the African Continental Free Trade Area. Yeah, so the AfCFTA is something that has been operational for 5 years, and Nigeria has been moving, but now we're at an inflection point at the 5-year mark. Each country has to reassess. So we hosted the Secretary General on the 16th of January, and that signaled, we announced there that we were doing our 5-year review. We commenced that process. I recently inaugurated a Central Coordinating Committee for AfCFTA, which brings together all the stakeholders to align. So as we go into domestication, we're all well aligned, how we operationalize the AfCFTA, and then how we support the last pillar would be our export drive. And the reason why we're able to be calm in our response is that for a number of months now, we've been plotting and strategizing on our export drive. We've been working on market access across Africa for our exporters in the non-oil space and also to different markets in the Middle East, in China, in India, in Brazil, in the EU, several countries, including the United States, which will also have close strategic ties.
And I'm coming back to that.
I know you are. That's why we're coming back to that. So that gives us a robust portfolio working on. So for exports, we'll also prioritize reforming our free trade zones and what that means. And you know that the AfCFTA itself is the largest free zone in the world, 1.4 billion people, a 3.4 trillion economy, and how Nigeria operationalizes that and optimizes that for Nigerians. So working with our stakeholders, with NASIMA, with other organized private sector, to equip Nigerian businesses to take advantage of that. So those are the 3 key priority areas: the investment mobilization, the trade policy reforms, and the export drive.
So thank you very much. I love what you said, because a lot of times when people talk about the ministry, they do not see it in detail like you've just explained. And hearing you talk about, those 3 things, speaking now to the trade policy, we know trade cannot occur if governments of the day, regardless of what countries they are, do not create that enabling environments, for those things to happen. The new thing on the board today, tariffs.
Yes.
The United States has a new president who has just imposed a couple of tariffs across, various countries in the world. And I think they imposed a 14% tariff
14%
on Nigeria. It was interesting to see that you had a response, which you put out. And personally, the calm that I received from such a response was enough for me to know, yes, indeed, you are not reacting, but you're prepared for eventualities. How are we going to handle this in terms of tariffs? And I know Nigeria today is seen as a jewel in Africa. You have China trying to push its Belt and Road Initiative. You have India, the Indian Prime Minister was there. You have the European countries all trying to come back because of this renewed confidence that they've seen from the work President Bola Ahmed Tinubu and those of you in FEC have been doing. So what is the potential impact of these tariffs, and how are we prepared?
So you're spot on, Otega. I think we should start from the reforms. So everybody has been watching the removal of the subsidy on day 1, the unification of the Naira exchange rates, and the improvement, the stability, which is what private sector wanted. And also the most recent reforms with NNPC, the world is watching. Last Friday, I was speaking with investors in Paris, and then I spoke with investors Monday and Tuesday in London. They're noticing, they're following, and the market is responding very positively to Nigeria. And that brings me to the G2G discussions that underpin our investment promotion, our partnership agreements, and the level of interest in the Nigerian economy. Why this is important is because when you see governments interested in engaging bilaterally with the country, that means they're going to back and encourage their businesses to invest in that country. There'll be investment promotion, there'll be investor protection mutually, and that's when you really see the kinds of capital flows that we want for the Nigerian economy start coming in. So we're in a really good place. I like to call 2015 an inflection point. We've taken the surgery, we've gone through recovery, and we're really now at an inflection point. And so why we were able to have a calm response to the 14% tariffs is because, first of all, looking at our exports to the US, it's still mostly oil, and about 70% of that is under AGOA. And so we have quite a bit of cover. We don't know where AGOA would go. It's up for renewal, renegotiation in September. But for now, that's why I think Nigerians, to a large extent, were able to be quite calm. But now this 14% speaks to non-oil exports in particular, although out of our whole bouquet of exports, only about 2% is non-oil exports. We also have big constituencies. Our second largest exports to the US would be fertilizer, followed by lead, and some of our biggest exporters, like for instance, Dangote fertilizer, quite a bit to the US. But what you would also see is that when you see relatively other countries that also export fertilizer to the US may have higher tariffs imposed on them. So by and large, even in the short term and with the 90-day moratorium, it's not looking too bad for Nigerian businesses. But what does this mean for anybody operating a business? It takes you to the terrain of uncertainty. You're not able to plan. And this is for consumers also in the US will probably be feeling, buyers from the US will be feeling the pressure of not knowing what would happen. And so that's where the world is right now. A lot is happening with different countries, but I want to just draw really our attention to how should Nigeria and Africa be positioning and presenting and preparing at a time like this. The next ministerial conference of the WTO will be taking place on the African continent for only the second time next March in Cameroon, and they're just our neighbors. We need to have a strong, coordinated outcome from that ministerial conference. So all roads lead to AfCFTA, lead to Africa First, lead to, everybody's sort of getting more protectionist, but I don't even see it as protectionism. I see it as enlightened self-interest. So Nigeria, with our leading role in Africa, are saying what is important for African businesses, particularly in the non-oil, is to focus on intra-African trade. We're currently at only about 17%, and you know the penetration level, the intra-regional trade of some of the other like EU or even Asia. And what we need to see is AfCFTA is built to produce about 50% by 2030. But that will only happen if all of us embrace the implementation of AfCFTA. So with the Central Coordinating Committee and the work that we're doing as digital trade champions, and I know you're coming to that, that is exactly how we're going to position Nigeria and Africa to take advantage. So trading goods is one area, trading services is another area. The need for trade facilitation, customs talking to each other, standards, market access. So that's one area that we've been prioritizing for the last 5 months. So this is just an imperative to do more of what we're already doing, and then making sure that we're opening market access for Nigerian businesses across regions. So we've been talking with countries like Japan, where we control about 40% of exports of sesame to Japan, making sure that all standardization requirements for our sesame to have zero rejects. We're working very hard on that with the Export Promotion Council, with Ministry of Agriculture. We're also making sure that our exports to the EU, because the EU has the EU deforestation regulation coming live this December, making sure that Nigeria is ready for exports. We have rubber, we have cocoa, different cash crops going there. And so those are some of the market access. We also have on our priority list minerals. Nigeria has about 700 billion worth of minerals, solid minerals, about 44 of them in commercial quantities. And those are our mineral reserves. So Mr. President has earmarked that as one of our priority areas. Mr. Dele Alake has been traveling the world, just speaking with the High Commissioner of Australia, South Africa, Canada, different, attracting investment into our mining space. And so we continue to see how we would diversify our portfolio of investments that we're attracting. So the areas that I can just say priority areas that people are looking at for Nigeria, in addition to energy and new energy as well, that I've just spoken about. We also have a lot of interest in our digital trade. We'll talk about that shortly, I'm sure. But we have a lot of interest also in infrastructure in general. And you know the president has his infrastructure project that you've also spoken about a number of times. So those areas remain critical and important. Manufacturing is key for us. We work across ministries. So for instance, the Ministry of Health, the Honorable Minister of Health has a presidential initiative on manufacturing in the health sector in
That's the one
Nigeria.
that they give the waivers on.
Yes. So there will be waivers. So for different types of manufacturing in Nigeria, so that we can export to the whole of Africa a lot of health products that are needed, like syringes, like mosquito nets, things like that we tend to import from other regions. COVID has taught us all the importance of having things close by. So other sectors that continue to generate a lot of interest will be agribusiness. There's a lot of opportunity for businesses, for investors, Nigerians and foreign investors to key into. Every challenge is pretty much an opportunity for investments to make money. I always make the point that there's a lot of money to be made in Nigeria. For instance, with agriculture, arable land, with infrastructure, you can imagine road, rail, waterways, so many opportunities, and you will have social impact. Whatever you do, so anybody who is interested in social impact, there's no better place. And if you're interested in sustainability, every opportunity to also make sure that your businesses are, so this is the best.
I'm happy you spoke about AfCFTA, because for me, coming from the manufacturing space, I was able to see firsthand how protectionism in some African countries is stopping Nigerian companies and businesses from maximizing, the benefits of the African continental free trade area. That's one. Two, how do we ensure we can take or maximize benefits for AfCFTA without being overly protectionist? And then how can we ensure that our manufacturers, our service providers, can up their game, whether it's in the products they do, whether it's in value addition to agricultural products or whatsoever, or even in solid minerals space, so that our goods and services are competitive, because only when our goods and services are competitive on a global scale, that's when we can actually maximize, the benefits of things like AfCFTA. And finally, on the AfCFTA question, you can't do, or we can't be where we are without infrastructure. I know in the 80s, there was this Trans-African Highway that we were talking about building, which was to connect 9 roads connecting north, south, east, and west of Africa. A lot of those are still not on ground. There are bits and pieces in countries, but a lot of those things also hinder intra-African trade, free movement of people, free movement of people within Africa. It's funny that it's easier for me to fly from some European countries to some African countries than from Nigeria anywhere else. So how is the ministry, because, looking at all these things and providing support or, just creating opportunities for Nigerian businesses to take full advantage of that?
Yeah, so you've summed up the challenges in one fell swoop, and every challenge that you've mentioned is actually an investment opportunity. So what we're discussing here is productivity and competitiveness. So with productivity, the amount of investments needed in our infrastructure space, I believe the gap is about $1 billion. So what we're talking about here is competitiveness and productivity. So with productivity, we're looking at power. And so power generation, distribution, transmission, all the work that the Honorable Minister of Power has been doing in that area, the Presidential Siemens Initiative, and all the grappling with, there's no shortcut, but making sure that there are a lot of creative IPPs and new energy, clean energy solutions, solar solutions around the country. Every country needs power for industrialization. Sure. So that work is going on. But there are other sort of infrastructure leapfrog opportunities. So using digital public infrastructure to streamline the movement of people. We have now our e-passports and now our e-visas, yes, coming up on stream. We have the National Single Window Project, which Mr. President prioritized since last year and is led by the Special Advisor on Revenue Generation, who is also the Executive Chair of FIRS, Zach. And so we have the single window coming on stream, which will streamline with technology, the trade facilitation.
Can you just explain what that single window thing means?
So the National Single Window is a portal that countries use to create an electronic solution where all the relevant ministries, departments, and agencies key into a single architecture, and it's basically a clearinghouse for documentation
like
and
business
payments.
in a box.
Yes. So when you don't have it, traders, importers, exporters are dealing with multiple government agencies and a lot of paperwork. So a single window is basically for efficiency and transparency, particularly for imports and exports of goods. So the Nigerian National Single Window Project has been stalled for a few years, but Mr. President last year prioritized it and put Mr. Zach Adedeji in charge of it, and it's been running very well. We're working with Crimson Logic. The project is on. I was on it before, and the ministry is on it still now. And so Nigeria is probably the only major economy that doesn't have a national single window. And so now delivering in Africa. And so now delivering a national single window will ensure that our trade facilitation leapfrogs. So where we have port congestion, these are some of the digital public infrastructure tools that we use to overcome that. And so in terms of airports, seaports, I've talked about that, broadband, also another area that we prioritize. Nigeria has probably about 4 submarine cables landing on Nigeria, but the last mile. So all those are business opportunities for the last mile and across the country, not just in the major capitals. So these are the enablers that are ongoing that will unlock. So when I say we're at an inflection point, we really are, because this work is all in progress. And as they start unfolding, we just continue to see. So for instance, I'll tell you that year on year, Nigeria's non-oil exports increased 24%.
Yes, I saw the balance of payment reports.
Yes.
Impressive.
Yes. And so non-oil exports, when we talk about that being a response and which markets, it was mainly across Africa. So our small and medium-sized enterprises, equipping them to go across Africa and other markets as well, working on our standards. So the Standards Organization of Nigeria, AfCFTA Bank has put some standards, some quality, national quality, some quality infrastructure across Nigeria. The first one in Ogun State, they have one coming up in Imo State and one in Kaduna State, so that we don't have rejects. So all the things that are needed for intra-African trade. So for instance, AfCFTA again has a payment, exactly, PAP, so you know that. And what that means is our local currency, and we're saving correspondence bank fees from leaving the continent.
So a Nigerian looking to sell something in South Africa doesn't need to convert to rand.
No.
You pay for it in Naira.
Naira, and it's received in rand.
Immediately.
And you don't have to change to dollar to go to New York to come back. So correspondence bank fees. So it's cheaper, faster to do business on the continent to help us. So you must know that AfCFTA launched its first trade, in Nigeria, of course. And thank you very much. You were all there. And it's not just that is a milestone for Africa. So AfCFTA Bank will also open trade houses in Barbados, in Switzerland, across 9 locations on the continent. And what these trade houses do, both physically and virtually, is enable trade. And so the word trade, what a time to be in trade. The headwinds are actually exciting. I find them an opportunity to redefine trade on the continent, to redefine trade for Nigeria and for Africans, for us to dig deep. It's a time for resilience, which is what we're known for. And I know that it's going to work out well for us.
No, I believe it's going to work out.
Yes,
because I can see, I see the data.
Yes.
I travel, I speak to people.
Yeah.
When we came in, a lot of people were not so happy because very difficult decisions had to be made. But when you look at the consistency with which Mr. President has stuck to his reforms, his reform agenda, the support of ministers like you, and some Nigerians were supporting us, you can start to see that we are turning the tide. I had a friend who, when the currency got devalued and all that, he focused a lot of his business on exports.
Yes.
He's making multiples.
Yes.
Despite the fact that, yes, some of his operational costs have gone up.
Yes.
But just exporting to the African continent alone is making multiples of what it was making in the past few years. And I think that's the silver lining in the current situation that we are now. It's opened up a lot of opportunities for people, especially young people. And that brings me to my next question. You're so passionate about the digital economy. And I remember listening to your last ministerial press briefing. You kept talking about it, and I could see the excitement on your face when you're running through your slides. How are you using the digital space, or how does digital economy play a role in the work you're doing, and how are you using digital space, to ensure that trade and investments in Nigeria, continue to be on that path to which you're putting it on?
Perfect question. So I was so excited because I was fresh back from Addis, where Mr. President had received a personal commendation for his work on digital trade. And Nigeria was also named Digital Trade Champion. We'll be leading that with Kenya and South Africa for the continent. And what that means is that for Nigeria, for example, 200 million people, circa, and 70% of that amount are young people. And they are tech natives. The talent pool from Nigeria is just phenomenal. 12 unicorns on the continent, 50% from here. And this is where, across services, so let me just backtrack a bit. Nigeria's GDP is already over 50% services. 10% of that is ICT. This is where you have Nigerian youth just so creative, whether it's fintechs, edutech, health tech. When we hosted the Secretary General in January, we brought about Bamboo, we brought about 4 or 5 of our tech businesses to present to him. They're trading 4, 5, 6 CC Hub countries across the continent already. And he was pretty excited. So this is where we scale rapidly and we can attract huge amounts of investment. This is where we can generate jobs. So outsourcing of business services, that's a 300 billion economy globally. India has done it. We are on a better time zone with a better accent. Nigerian youth are entrepreneurial and self-driven by nature. So we're also positioning through our national talent export program to be able to have productive jobs here. So health tech, different solutions, accounting services, paralegal services, they can earn hard currency. So we're making market access by speaking internationally to encourage businesses to set up their backends here in Nigeria. So a lot going on in the tech space, a lot of opportunity for generating jobs. The NATEP program, Mr. President kicked that off in New York for us in 2023. And we plan to have 1 million jobs in 5 years. So about 300 million jobs is our target, our immediate target in the next 12 months. And so it's an exciting time. We have a young, sharp team working on it. And I think that it's also closely linked to the creative space, working on IP policy, working on the regulatory challenges. It's an ecosystem that I interact with quite often. Last week, I was at the DICE program, and there was a mixer for the tech and creative. In London, I was also with that delegation from the Nigeria British Chamber of Commerce. It was focused on the creative sector. So just to chip that in as well, I think those are the
it's very
two
important
most exciting.
the next thing I was coming to was to ask you about, 70%, the 70% are youth. The 55 to 60% are women who mostly make up, our agricultural human resource. Those two demographics are going to be key to driving your vision. What initiatives do you have to take care of that?
Oh, there's several. So for instance, for our female exporters, the NEPC, we have a program focused on about 3,000 female exporters that we're hand-holding. We worked with the WTO. NEPC actually won a global award, which is like support from the ICT and WTO to champion for female exporters. So that work has been going on for the last 12 months, and it's now just being scaled across. The UNDP also has another program focused on supporting Wasima, the Chamber of Commerce. Yes, they have female-led, and I've spoken with them, engaged with them to support female-led businesses. So in the export space, we've just come out of March. We did several things, just supporting female-led businesses. Banks know that when they lend to women pay back their loans.
It's proven.
Yes. So I've heard several managing directors speak to that statistics. Their least amount of non-performing loans is the programs that they have for female entrepreneurs. So we're just encouraging that space, equipping them what it would mean. They have different cooperatives. So there's a cooperative of women and share businesses. So all those light manufacturing of cosmetic products, how they can export, making market access for them in different markets that they want to get to, working on the standardization, working on the logistics, and it's the granular work that will help them do this. Same thing with the youth-led businesses. I think just enabling them to fly, whatever it is they need. We're supporting the first digital free trade zone in Africa. It's coming up in Nigeria, and so we're supporting that project as well. Regulatory-wise, what they need, Mr. President actually is leading that intervention, and I've been asked to coordinate that on the policy side. So there's several interesting things. We're a listening government. You know that.
I know that. And I'm also a young person too.
Yes, we're a listening government. And Mr. President has prioritized. You've seen him respond to different requests, to different policy shifts. You've seen him self-correct. Exactly. Yes, whenever we've had unintended consequences, he has a special advisor working on policy coordination, Hadiza Bala Osman. You know that even when the private sector has raised concerns, like for instance with the Financial Reporting Council, we're really still on that, reviewing that and hoping to go back to Parliament to discuss a review on that if they land it at that, because it's a PPP. Everything is about engagement. Coming from my background where I champion the regulatory impact analysis toolkit, we're making sure that discipline and the Executive Order 1 business facilitation, that discipline cascades down in this ministry. We were the first to have our strategic retreat. We released an outlook document and just saying the priority areas of where we're going. And it's just about staying focused. So while there may be headwinds...
When can we get this outlook document with us?
We released it in January. I'll share it with you. It was the first thing we released in the new year, like the third week of January. But I spoke to it in the ministerial briefing, and I'm speaking now. So our priorities really haven't changed. And it's consistency and strategic plan, our roadmap, just focusing on those three areas I mentioned: investment mobilization, the trade policy, and then the export focus. And that's what makes us able to stay calm. So the American ambassador was here on a courtesy call on the 26th of March. And we're already speaking strategically. We have good relations on where our trade relations will be going. They also have, their concerns. There's some products that, frankly, as Nigeria, they're on our prohibition list. Yeah. And so they were speaking to, when are we going to...
They made mention of this.
Yes, so they made mention of that. And so this is trade. Trade is negotiation. We all go to the market. We negotiate.
Just the same way we can export some things to
exactly. Them, So this is it. It's trade. And so we're not overheating the policy. We have new, as things come, like Japan has a new initiative they're kicking off for like 4 African countries. Of course, they're starting with Nigeria. And so there's interest everywhere. Saudi Arabia, very interested in some of our key sectors. I've listed out the priority areas. So I think things are looking bright.
Yes, what a time to be alive. What a time to take a bet on Nigeria.
Yes.
But let me throw you a curveball. You mentioned NATEP. I know a lot of young people who, currently they outsource their skills and services across the world. The most important thing they need for that is connectivity, the internet connectivity. And I know the Minister of Digital Economy, Communications, has been doing a lot. I know they're laying the fiber network, they're trying to improve quality of service across board. But this is a pain point. And I remembered it now when you mentioned NATEP, because someone spoke to me yesterday about it. It's a pain point for a lot of young entrepreneurs or who outsource their skills outside the world. They can't do anything and they're losing money. So it's not so much a question than it is a plea to you and the Minister of Digital Economy to please find a solution for Nigerian youth in that aspect, because they're bleeding money right now. A lot of them are losing, contracts or things like that because they can't keep up or they don't have good enough connectivity and data access. So I think I should just put that by the way.
I think that is one of the most important things that you've said. And because we know that this is an area where literally all they need is power and connectivity, you have a device and you're good to go. So even in the reforms, you saw that Mr. President allowed the slight increase for the telcos, and that's like to deliver that access, because cost of production had gone up for everybody, cost of doing business. And so that was part of that.
Limited the ability to invest in.
Exactly. So it was because we were all having the drop calls, we were all experiencing. And so when that happened, I think that it was also worth making the point that it was to support demographics like theirs that do business basically on their device. We have so many digital businesses. And so that was really in response. So taking that pain point, all of us, to make sure that there's that connectivity. And I mentioned that we have a lot of capacity, fiber, submarine cables that have landed here. But the last mile, exactly, more data centers are being built. So this is an exciting investment opportunity. So that's why I'm coming back to it, that because of the offtake and the consumption, even socially, young Nigerians consume so much.
I know.
Exactly. So that's a business opportunity we can, and we're marketing it actively across the world. And there's interest. I mentioned interest from the Middle East. So all the G2G agreements that need to enable this capital to come in, that's what we're working on. And so they will definitely see the difference in the short to medium term.
So thank you very much. I don't want to take so much of your time because I know you're pretty busy. You've done a lot in showing us that you're not, or the era of reacting is long gone. I mean, what you just said now just proved that to me again, that we are ahead of the curve, we're seeing these issues, and we're not waiting for anyone to tell us before we put, things to fix it in place. On these notes, we've been in this office now for close to, how many months? 6 months?
5. Yes,
Okay.
we just started next month.
What would you consider as your most significant contribution, to the trade and investment landscape so far? And what legacy do you intend to leave?
I think so far, our most significant contribution will definitely be the Digital Trade Championship of Mr. President for Nigeria and for Africa, because this is going to enable us to lead on digital public infrastructure. It enables us to speak not just for Nigeria, for African youth, to attract the much needed investment into this climate, to work with governments, to operationalize connectivity, these issues that we've been talking about. And I think that affects millions and millions and millions of African youth. So that would be, for me, the Digital Trade Championship. Legacy, definitely impact. Yeah. And I would stay on the theme, I'm a teacher at heart, so I would stay on the theme of young Nigerians, young Africans, taking it from policy to performance, making them feel heard, and creating an enabling environment for them to thrive. The talent pool is unbelievable. Everywhere I go across the world, people are, whether it's Afrobeat, creativity, tech businesses, whatever it is, people are blown away. And so we just need to enable them to fly. They're the present, not even the future. And so it's my singular honor to support them. Nigerians everywhere, home and abroad, 2025 is an inflection point. Mr. President has taken the hard decisions. We've been through the surgery, and now we're definitely in recovery. The economy is more stable. This is the time to take a bet on Nigeria. In particular, I'd like to encourage everyone to take a bet on Africa. The African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement enables our exports to really thrive. And I think that this is the best time for Nigerians to support Africa by exporting our quality goods, by exporting our quality services all across the region to engender prosperity for all.
Dr. Oduwole, thank you very much. You've provided your insights, very clear, crisp, and actually very detailed. And I'm very grateful I had this opportunity to have the sit down with you, because now, even though I thought I knew, I know better. And I'm more confident to go out there and say, this is what we're doing. This is where we're going. And, Nigeria will be better off for the work you're doing. So thank you very much once again for your time. We'll be calling upon you again, because I know we haven't spoken or discussed half of what you're doing. So we'll definitely come back to you. But Thank you very, very much for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.